Okay, welcome to College Prep Roadmap Series Week 8. Thank you so much for being back. Really excited to be here every week with you to share with you up-to-date information that's accurate, coming from the official source, not just opinions and not just things we thought we heard. But this is a place where you're going to get the information that you parents and students need. Today I have a fabulous guest, Jeremy Tate from CLT, but I'm going to hold off on the introduction. What I'd like to do is I'd like to bring you up to speed with the new updated information from last week. So there has been some pretty cool things happening that I think parents and students need to be aware of, starting with, oh my goodness, this morning, what I read was there is a class action suit against the College Board. This is on behalf of the students that took the AP online exam last week. Now, we talked about this last week. This is the 9th day of APs. It's Thursday, so it's the 9th day of AP tests, and there have been a lot of issues. Now, to defend College Board, I can only imagine. I think we knew that going into it when they had to pivot and create an online product for our students. So these students are having a challenging time submitting answers. So by default, College Board is allowing students with any technical issues to retake the test. Within a 48-hour window, they could submit a ticket and request to have it taken for the second time. Students are beside themselves. They are not wanting to take the test. Again, they want College Board to score their original exam. So that's what this class action lawsuit is all about. It just happened. Who knows what's going to happen, but I'm just bringing that to your attention because I know a lot of you viewers have students that have taken AP exams and maybe they're taking them today and then tomorrow, Friday, being the last day. So 2 weeks of AP will be finished soon, thank goodness. Next thing is just good luck with the rest of you test takers, you AP test takers. This was an unusual year, and I think everyone rallied and they did what they needed to do. And I applaud the teachers for having to do their part because none of this was easy, and all of the background support from high school administrators, AP coordinators, etc. So kudos to you, hats off. We're almost there. We're going to finish, cross over that finish line tomorrow on Friday. UCs, this was a big deal for our University of California system. I am from California. Our guest is from Maryland, but the UC system has proposed to phase out testing, which is interesting because today's topic is about testing. They want to phase out the SAT and the ACT over the next 5 years. I think this has all been brought on by COVID-19. It's been putting pressure on them, and they are looking at possibly creating their own test. Who knows? But later today, we should find out where that's going to be, what direction that will be going into. So later on today is when probably the announcement will be made. But I thought that was fairly interesting. University of California and the California state system, our 2 state systems in California, are very popular. A lot of students apply to these 2 systems. They're the biggies. So when they make an announcement, whatever direction that is, Cal State system, they're the first ones, the big school or big system to make an announcement that they're going fully online for the fall semester of 2020. That was big news. So UC's more update on that. Not sure where that's going to go. More and more colleges are leaning towards getting students on campus in the fall. Getting students on the campus on fall, however, there will be some restrictions. There will be protective gear that will be required. They will have temperature spots all on campus, and they're going to be checking and regulating students, making sure that they are healthy and that they are not interfering with other students' health. They are going to shorten up that first semester. They're going to eliminate fall break. They do not want students traveling and leaving campus and then coming back. So they'll eliminate fall break and have final exams before Thanksgiving vacation. So that is a new kind of twist in the last week. More and more colleges are jumping on that model, hoping that that will be the case. And then after Thanksgiving, a lot of them will be going remote. So the students will be off campus and they don't want to take a chance A, for them to come back and bring anything onto the campus, and B, it's the cold and flu season, which is the winter months, and they're trying to avoid that. So stay tuned. Who knows? Kind of like that idea, rather than saying, forget it, let's just do online. They're doing their best to make sure that, you know, students have that experience to be on campus, especially our current seniors in high school who want to get on that college campus for the first time. ACT, May 26th, they will announce if the June test will actually happen or not. They've been dragging their feet. We've been waiting. Students have registered and signed up for the ACT. We'll finally find out next week on the 26th if this is going to actually happen or not. God only knows. We'll have to just wait on that. And then last things, just for our current students, our current juniors, continue working on researching and exploring colleges. Use your virtual resources. Remember letters of recommendation. Stick with your high school counselor and follow protocol. How to ask your teachers, making sure that you're asking the right teachers, the teachers that know you in the core subject areas. Work on your college essays and continue to prep for testing. So these are the big things for our juniors. Sophomores, do the same thing. Use your time wisely this summer. Who knows where we're going to be, if we're going to have less restrictions, more restrictions, if we'll be on campus in the fall or not. Let's not use this situation as something that's going to interfere with your future and the momentum moving forward. Okay, so you guys are doing a great job. This is graduation month, and I think some more graduations in June. So happy graduation to those students that are going to be graduating. So fun, so exciting. And now, Jeremy, thank you so much for being patient. I have Jeremy Tate. Now, Jeremy Tate is a CEO and founder of Classic Learning Test. Honestly, I did not know much about CLT until a few months ago. I had heard about it, but didn't know much about it. Classic Learning Test is the quiet hidden gem. It's the third college admission test that's been around since 2015. Now, two amazing things that I love about CLT, and Jeremy's going to go into more detail, is number one, it was designed to be taken online. So what ACT and SAT College Board is going through, CLT had already taken care of that. That was already part of the master plan. And then secondly, results are given within 24 hours. I don't know about you, Jeremy, but I have forward grown children. All have gone to college, 3 graduates and 1 currently in college. And waiting for those test scores when you think you aced it or you think you bombed it, 2 weeks can kill you. So enough of me. From Maryland, I have Jeremy Tate, and I'm going to have you take it away. And again, thank you so much for providing this fabulous information for us.
Hey, Dorian, thanks so much for having me. And we share a similar background. My background was college counseling at Mountain DeSales Academy in Catonsville, Maryland, which is an all-girls Catholic school. And I know you were at Servite, is that right? High school in Anaheim, California?
Exactly. Yes.
An all-boys Catholic school.
All boys. So we do have that similar, that similar background. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Thanks so much for the invite. CLT is about 4 years old. And what I saw as a college counselor is that the student experience for when you take the SAT and ACT, they're as bad as they could possibly be. Students have to register a month out. They're overcharged. They give up an entire Saturday to go take a test that's really boring. Then they wait sometimes 5 weeks for their scores, and then they get nickel and dimed by the college board to share those scores with colleges. CLT was born out of really just as a college counselor, hearing those frustrations directly from students and thinking, there could be something so much better than this. So we launched, sometimes we say we want to be the Chick-fil-A of standardized testing or the Southwest Airlines of standardized testing. Companies that put the customer at the center. College Board and ACT are not known for their customer service. In fact, they don't seem to know that they have customers at all, based on kind of the way they tend to treat students and sometimes even college counselors. And so I think that has been the reason CLT, when we launched, people said, no chance. College Board and ACT own this arena. There's no way somebody can break into it. I think it's been because of customer service, because we're now leading on the technology front. I think that we've been able to kind of get a beachhead. And now, you know, with SAT and ACT out for the year, we're kind of the only game in town, which has been a lot of fun. So we've had, after year of, you know, about 100% growth, we're up over 1,000% so far in 2020, which is pretty wild.
That to me is amazing. Yeah. Well, and the fact that you were a counselor, you worked with the students. It wasn't like you were up on a hill looking down and not having that organic relationship with students. And I agree with you. I think everyone, every student, every parent gets that unnecessary angst about testing. It's, you know, spending all this money in test prep, which I think test prep is a very important investment. You know, just figuring it out, sorting it out, having somebody guide you. Now tell me right now, currently, what I read, and I think you and I had a conversation the other day, well, I know we did, there are less than 200 colleges and universities at the moment, 100% accepting this as the admissions entrance exam or admissions exam. Now, tell me a little bit about that in terms of how to get the other colleges on board, because it's a new test.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So yeah, you know, when you start off with a new test, it's kind of a strange thing, right? You go to a college and they haven't had a new test since 1959 when the ACT rolled out, and so they're kind of like, what's the need? SAT and ACT are fine. Some of us are going test optional. But when we go back and we say, well, because it's about the student and they're currently having a really bad experience with the SAT and ACT, this they can take from the comfort of home. It's a shorter test. The results are a lot faster. And so with that, you know, we've gotten colleges to change their admission standards, but that's a very long process. Some colleges, it's 2 years or more from the first time we talk to them until it goes all the way through every academic committee and through marketing and admissions and provost and president and everybody else. Colleges to move real quickly. But almost every college now actually does accept the CLT, at least as a supplemental. And so even Harvard, I've had a great dialogue this year with Marilyn McGrath, who's the Dean of Admissions at Harvard. CLT is a bit harder, not way harder, but it is a bit harder, and therefore it can better differentiate top students. And so if you ever look at the CLT concordance chart, a score of a 115, top scores of 120, a 115 or higher is actually off the charts completely on an SAT or ACT comparison. And so it's a really good way for students to kind of showcase their academic ability to colleges and do it in a way that's a lot less painful than SAT or ACT.
Okay, so I'm a student and I'm looking at the CLT. You mentioned it's a rigorous exam. Well, it demonstrates and it collects data for a rigorous exam, so it's not just an easy test. What are the differences and what are the similarities if a student right now is you know, are parents deciding SAT, ACT, or looking into the CLT? Could you hit the bullet points of what's covered on the test?
Yeah, I think in one way a student put it a few years ago, she wrote on her own a little blog about her experience with the CLT. And one thing she put in, I think her name was Olivia Dennison, that the kinds of text you read on the CLT, you would want to read anyway. Whereas with the SAT or ACT, you would never read it unless you were actually taking the SAT or ACT. So what we try to do is we try to put students in front of the best of what has been thought and said, the kinds of texts that have most influenced society and culture. That could be Plato and Aristotle. It could be Thomas Aquinas. It could be Nietzsche or Charles Darwin, Flannery O'Connor, C.S. Lewis. A lot of the authors that are left out on an SAT or an ACT because they are controversial. SAT and ACT have a sensitivity committee that eliminates any text that would offend a student. CLT takes a very different approach, and we say, look, if a text can't offend anyone, it's probably not very important either. And so what we try to do is put students really in front of the texts that have changed society and culture, and that it's the mark of an educated young person if they can read an idea that they may disagree with, and they can still understand what the author is saying and not freak out or anything. Okay. So yeah, so passages that we draw even from philosophy, even some religious texts, shorter. And then on the math side, the big difference is that there is no calculator on the CLT.
Okay. And is it measuring the
But you don't need
same?
one either.
Right, right. And Algebra 1, geometry, Algebra 2, trigonometry, is it the same subject matter that's being tested?
It is, yeah. And if it's possible, Doreen, as we're chatting, I'd love to do a quick screen share and show you a test. Would that be something we can do?
Absolutely.
Okay, so
Yes,
we'll do a
yes.
screen share real quick, and I'll just take you through a CLT and what that looks like. So there's 120 questions on the CLT, and it's 120 points. And so we wanted to make the scoring a lot more simple for students. When they take the SAT or ACT and they have 189 questions and then they get a score out of 36 points, that's confusing. What does that even mean? So CLT, 120 questions, 120 points. So here's what it looks like when you open up a CLT. Pretty similar setup. You have a passage on the left, you have answers on the right, you have your timer going here in the top right, so you know exactly how much time you have left. There's 40 verbal reasoning questions here is the first part of the test, and students have 40 minutes to do that. And then after that, and so again, the source material, the passages are different than an SAT or an ACT. In this case, we actually have John Paul II, who would never be on an SAT or an ACT, but a really thoughtful passage about human suffering and what it means. Then we skip over to the grammar writing portion. And this is mechanically very similar to an SAT or ACT, what we're looking for, a basic command of the English language, punctuation, spelling. And so you can see that here.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last part is the quantitative reasoning. There are 40 questions here as well. Students have 45 minutes for the quantitative reasoning section. So the whole exam, start to finish, is a total of 2 hours. Students hit submit when they're done, and this doesn't have the submit button right here because it's just a practice test, but then they get the results back a lot quicker as well. And we are actually, Doreen, it may be helpful to mention, currently not next day. Typically we're same day or next day results. Because of COVID, the CLT now is taken online and it is remotely proctored. And so students we're recording the students testing, we're recording their screen, we're monitoring your keystrokes. It's crazy technology. But then we have to have real proctors go back and to view all of those. And so now that we're actually remotely proctoring students, now it is a 10-day delay for scores, unfortunately.
Okay, but 10 days is okay. It's not like it's 2 months.
Yeah. 10 days is better for sure.
So based on the COVID, because of the increase in students registering for the CLT, is that why you're having the proctors come in and now view the recordings?
So we were always online, but students used to take their device and they would go to a testing center with their own laptop. Now students just stay at home and they test from home, all done remotely. And it's actually, I think it's more secure if anything. I mean, it is really crazy technology that we can view the student and their screen and their keystrokes and everything else. So it's really secure. But then we go back and watch those videos and check all the student IDs as they hold them up. And so our first time we did this in a big way was April 25th. 94% of students, great experience. They got their scores. For 5% of students, there was a tech issue, which often was the internet connection on their side, as we do need a good amount of bandwidth to be able to record your video. So if you do join us on June 20th, make sure that you have a really good internet connection.
Okay, and if there's any questions about their internet connection, who would they be able to reach out to, you or your team, to just double check, triple check that everything's set?
Yeah, so CLT, we really do, we say that we want to be the Chick-fil-A of standardized testing because, you can roll up to a Chick-fil-A and it looks like you're going to be in line for 3 hours. And then in 45 seconds, like you've got your shake, you've got your nuggets, it's good. Like they're an amazingly well-run operation. And CLT would be the same way. And so during test day, a student would just type into the bottom right, I need help. We have dozens of people that are trained and sitting and ready to go and troubleshoot any issue that students would have. So there's real support. These are not bots. It's a real person, can you help me? That's there to talk. So.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. Those quick chats, I use them all the time. Anytime I'm online, if I have a quick question, I don't want to wait. And I really appreciate that. Now, do you think moving forward, based on what's going on and having these proctors having to review, will you be using that same model moving forward, or will you go back to when centers open?
Yeah, we got so many good responses. So we started piloting this, I think, as I told you, Doreen, on the phone, last year, but we were doing it because we have students in the Dakotas or in Alaska, and they were driving like 4 hours to, sometimes getting a hotel room to take an online test in the morning. We thought, man, we can do better than that. And so we started piloting this remote proctoring, and then we went full scale with it with COVID. It's been a really good model so far. And at this point, I feel like we are leagues ahead of SAT and ACT. I mean, the amount of complexity on the technology front and the operations side is unbelievable. I always joke around, but it's actually true. If I didn't start CLT, I could not get a job here, because it is the most Top Gun people I've ever been around in my entire life. Our tech team are absolute wizards. What they're able to do, our operations team is really incredible. And that's the experience students are having. They'll say, I had a horrible experience with the SAT and ACT, and CLT is organized, it's smooth, it's like going to Chick-fil-A, and that's what we want to be doing.
Now, for students that are current juniors, and they're concerned about how the SAT and the ACT will be, rolling out future tests, what are some things that they could be doing now in terms of looking into CLT? Do you recommend that they contact the colleges on their list to see if they're going to partner and accept a CLT score during this pandemic, even if they're not an official school that has already accepted it? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And a number of times over the past few years, colleges will say, we had no interest in adding another option, but we've had so many students and parents ask us about CLT. What do we got to do? And so it's actually the most effective for a college adopting quickly when they hear from parents and students. It makes no sense for them not to accept CLT, especially at this point. We've jumped through every possible hoop in terms of the psychometrics and the validity and reliability of the test at this point. So yeah, we're always grateful when parents hear directly, when colleges hear directly from our parents and students.
And during these 3 months, I mentioned and I had read that the registration numbers spiked 1,000%. Now,
yeah, and we actually limited the number. We've had to, which I'll do a screen share again. But if you see this number here, which is ticking down all the time, we've limited the number for June because, again, to have, in this case, we limited it to about 12,000, and they're already half gone. Then to have 12,000 students on 12,000 internet connections and 12,000 different devices testing from home, and to be able to give all of them personal attention and support, we feel like this was the highest we can go and still be committed to excellence, which is what we want to do. So yeah, we've limited that number based on kind of how we think we can scale and do it responsibly for this date.
Now, I'm assuming that your team is probably working right now, literally right now, on what if this gets bigger? How, the bandwidth of CLT and what you'll need to do on your end to be able to serve your customers, as you mentioned, like Chick-fil-A. What is it that you see, a year from now or 2 years from now, so that we know that this is because it's reliable.
Doreen, I love that question. Yeah, I love that question. And we say all the time, last year we set a 10-year goal as a company, which still sounds crazy to people, to be number one over SAT and ACT. And people sometimes hear that and they laugh, and they're 1 million plus students. But we really think we can win, one, with a better vision for education, with content, the kinds of texts we're putting in front of students. But again, especially with the student experience, I never had a sense as a college counselor that the SAT, the creators of the SAT, College Board, or ACT, had thought through the student experience. How is this for them? Are they being served well? The number of students I talked to that had a horrible experience, it was like this dark cloud over their junior and senior year of dealing with the College Board. And then I would call the college counselor, and Doreen, you probably did. You're on hold for an hour. You finally get to the wrong person. They're annoyed you're calling. I mean, companies should not be able to stay in business with this level of customer service, And so, yeah, we're confident that we're going to keep growing and eventually be number one in the marketplace. That's the goal for sure.
Well, and I just think having more than 2 tests out there, I think it only makes sense, but the online component really, to me, is beneficial because everyone nowadays is on their laptops or their, desktops, or it's just the thing. Everyone has a device. I mean, my goodness, if you don't have your phone,
Yeah.
it's the way of life. Now, I'd love to have, yeah.
Oh yeah, I was just going to comment there. The complexity. We've been doing this. We started off our first test with 46 students, and so we have learned every month, every test. Kind of, we have learned how to do this well. College Board and ACT have to go from not doing it at all to doing hundreds of thousands of students at once. And like, I hope it goes okay for them. I really do, but I think it's going to be a disaster. I think AP was indicative of that it's going to be a disaster. And what they're trying to do from a tech perspective with the SAT is far more complex than what they did with the AP testing, far more complex.
Oh, I agree. That's why when I brought that up and I'm like, oh my gosh, a civil lawsuit, I was like, oh, gracious. They were just trying to help the kids and support the AP students and provide them an option. They didn't have to take the test, but if you worked hard up until February, March, and then you went remote learning, distance learning, well, you still have an option. And I was like, I was concerned.
It was bad. I'm a big Twitter fan, Doreen. I probably spend a little too much time on Twitter, actually. And seeing the comments to College Board, I mean, it was, just getting on their Twitter page, people were irate, that they had spent $94 for this kind of an experience, was really, really bad. And so, eventually something as big as College Board takes a really long time to get dislodged kind of in a market.
Right.
But I think they're making that a little easier right now.
I've got all these questions, sorry. So CLT is 2 hours and SAT and ACT is longer. I'm assuming that there was a reason to that, having it shorter. So can you tell me a little bit about how you designed it to that point and getting the data that colleges needed?
Yeah, that's great. So when I was a college counselor, I was also running a small SAT prep company and just with a few Catholic schools in the Baltimore area. And one of the things I noticed in prep was that students, they tended to do pretty well on sections 1, 2, and 3 of the SAT and really bad on sections 7, 8, and 9. And so this it's marathon testing. And if you're only trained to run a 10K and you try to run a marathon, it isn't going to go well. And there's really no reason from a test validity perspective that they need to be 4-hour tests, 5 hours after they read all the instructions, 180, 190 questions. CLT wanted to try to make the test as short as we could, but also give colleges an accurate score. And we struck a balance of a test that's 2 hours, 120 minutes, 120 questions. Colleges have been thrilled. Some great colleges already, Hillsdale, others, have endorsed CLT now as a superior alternative over the SAT and ACT. And again, not just beating them with a better student experience, but we really think the content, I mean, some of the passages they're putting on the SAT, it's like, did you design this just to put students to sleep? What is this? In other words, we've got Gandhi, we've got Martin Luther, we've got some of the greatest minds, we've got Einstein, some of the greatest minds in the history of thought.
Absolutely. And you're right. It's like students nowadays, I mean, what's their attention span? I mean, I heard adults attention span. I mean, it's minutes, like 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes. And I was like, you're right. You put a bunch of teachers in a faculty meeting, no one's paying attention, but you flip it. And when they have an audience of students in their classroom, these students are just like, it's hard to hold their attention. So, and it's got to be interesting. It really needs to be interesting so that they can be engaged and then they can do well. That's a doozy. Now, I'd love your thoughts on as schools are going test optional, and because of pandemic, it really puts everybody in a position to like, let's just reboot. Are we doing the right thing? Testing's always been just, the elephants in the room kind of thing. What are your thoughts moving forward in terms of testing?
We're generally in favor of the test optional movement. For some students, the best option is to put forward a CLT score or maybe an SAT score. For some school students, the best option is no score at all. CLT, one of the main reasons we actually got into this arena in the first place was not because we think a standardized test is the greatest thing in the world. My 14-year-old reminds me that it's not. But because SAT and ACT are also the main drivers of curriculum at the national level. Now, that may sound really strange, but if you think about this for a second, what would happen if the SAT and ACT announced that there would be a required French component starting in 2023? What would happen to education nationally? Well, everybody would start taking French, right? And so they kind of dictate what happens in the classroom. So the idea with CLT is, well, what if students needed to demonstrate their ability to read and understand the kinds of documents that were most foundational to America's founding, that were most foundational to the philosophy that you know, John Adams and Jefferson were borrowing from when they hammered out the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence.
Mm-hmm. So that's where it's okay. Now, so in terms of the lifespan of testing, do you see that testing will still be a requirement? I mean, yeah,
you know, it gets a bad rap, but I think what happens without a test is that the subjective metrics, who you know, are you connected to somebody in the admissions office? All of the subjective things, the things that are just an opinion, those things can only matter more when you get rid of the objective thing, which is the test. And so a test says, it doesn't matter who you know, your test score is going to help you to get into this selective college. And so that's a real concern, I think, that the test optional. And also a lot of people in the test optional movement, they're really passionate about high school GPA. But the school that I was at had a very, very rigorous grading scale. It was very hard to get a 4.0. But literally the brother school down the street, it was pretty easy to get a 4.0. In fact, they gave you 5 quality points for an A and a 5 in an AP class, whereas mine only gave you 4.5 points. So it's not all GPA. And even in the homeschool world, where there's a lot of folks now who hate the idea of GPA and grades altogether. So what do you do there? You know? So yeah, I think we'll have some more shake. Yeah.
Right. Sorry, I know there's a little bit of a delay. I apologize for interrupting. Yeah.
My connection, I think, is a bit off as well, so I apologize.
Yeah, but I do believe, I agree with you, your example of your all-girls school that you worked at versus the brother school. So that's the big purpose of having an unbiased exam. Something to look at to make sure that all the students are on an even playing field. You know, an AP exam, an AP class, I should say, course, we already know what that is, but an honors class and a college prep course, and we don't know if there's grade inflation. So I am a believer in having some neutral assessment to guide colleges and universities. Now, the way they factor it into their admissions, some are a little bit more, they weigh heavily on that exam, you know, and others maybe not so much. But I do believe that students, in my opinion, should continue to prep and be prepared to take some sort of a test. If it's not required, it's just added value. It's more data that a college and university can use in the admissions process. It won't be against you. And if you don't like your score, don't send it if it's test optional. You're in the driver's seat. So it should create a little bit more confidence for that student that isn't confident.
Yeah.
You know, just kind of doing that. Now, the one thing about ACT and SAT and CLT, what they have is you have lower level prep programs. So I would love for you to talk a little bit about the 8th grade test and then the 9th grade and the 10th grade test. So students are more introduced to this before they take the official.
Yeah. CLT 8 is our first one. It's designed for 7th and 8th grade students. So I got the dad experience of that not too long ago with my 8th grade daughter taking it for the first time. And then that can also be taken at home. There's actually a week in July, the week of July 20th is kind of CLT 8 week. So anytime that week, students can take the CLT 8. The CLT 10 is actually our most popular test. And so that's an alternative to the PSAT. But it's actually an easier way to access real scholarship dollars than the PSAT, which is through national merit, of course. They actually don't give out that much money at the end of the day. And so CLT has a number of awards for students with high scores. Mom and dad actually proctored that test, take it from home as well. And we're actually announcing our national regional scholars on the CLT 10 tomorrow. Actually today, later today.
Oh, wow. So the CLT 10 as a 10th grader, that is where you can earn money based on that score, that test score.
Yeah,
okay.
$2,500 scholarship to any CLT college.
And this, again, is not something that a school is sponsoring, like, PSAT junior year must be taken on a school site, must be taken. There's so many, it's all the red tape and all the restrictions. This is done at home. Your parents can be the proctor. You submit online, and then that will be the score that they'll use to determine if you earn money or not.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And people think we're crazy on this front for letting proctors, parents proctor a test that is attached to scholarship, real scholarship dollars, like actual checks that CLT is writing. Right. I think this is where we are very different than kind of the mainstream educational establishment. And myself as a Catholic, for one, I remember reading where John Paul II said that parents are the first and primary educators of their own kids.
Right.
And so we don't want to undermine a parent's integrity in saying, no, you can't be trusted to proctor your son or daughter on the CLT 10. Now, the CLT itself is tied to college money. They fund those scholarships attached to the CLT, so we can't make that decision. And so that's why we have the very stringent remotely proctored test, because colleges want to make sure that they can trust us with their dollars to award scholarships that way.
Got it. Yes, because I was going to ask that, because you'll have, some viewers maybe like parents, proctoring, but again, when they're taking it from home, there is some tool that's watching, right? It's watching the student take the test, or it's recording it. It's the stroke analysis and how long they're taking, and it's a time test, so they can't take any more time than it allotted.
Yeah, on the tech side, we have one of the easiest things for us to put up are just simple flags. And so if a kid goes over in time, it's very easy. It's all automated that we get flags for those students. And depending on how egregious, if it was half a second over, we don't disclose how long of a grace period we give students, of course, because then everybody would just use the grace period.
Right.
But those get flagged, and technology is incredible when it's used well. And we think that's the kind of experience students are having with it right now.
Exactly. One last question that I have, and it has to do with viewers that may be a little skeptical, like, how are they, how are they monitoring the student and all of the details, things that unfortunately College Board and ACT have to deal with because they haven't done this. But can you just, kind of bullet point the different areas that you look at in terms of the integrity of the test and as you monitor the student?
Yeah, so there's 5 ways that we're able to administer the test online, remote, at home. And so the student experience is they push start at the beginning of the test. They're going to agree to give us camera access and a screen share access. So we can see both their screen and the student as they're actually testing. And then we can also see on our back end as well, both the keystroke analysis. And so if a kid, you can't have a calculator. And so if a kid's typing in numbers, we're able to see that. They should never type in numbers. It's a multiple choice test. They should be using their mouse to select answers. And so we're able to run all of those kinds of flags. One of the first things a student does as well when they go in the room is they actually do a full 360 with their laptop, with their device. Some kids that are on with the desktop, it was kind of awkward because they were picking up a big clunky device, but that show that there's nobody else in the room with you. And they're showing us the closed door as well. And so we know that nobody's in the room with the student. We require a valid ID, which has to be either a U.S. passport or driver's license. There's an official CLT ID as well that students can get for, I believe, $18, which just requires a parent with a passport or ID verifying that for the student. Yeah, so we've done, I honestly believe at the end of the day that it's probably more secure, if anything, than remote than what we were doing before, which was 20 students going to one testing site and one proctor is monitoring 20 students at once. We had, again, about 5% of students who did not get a valid score. A lot of those students, it was simply an internet connection, but there were students that they did things they weren't supposed to do and their score was voided. And so I think that alone is, those are not fun. I had plenty of those conversations myself with parents. That's not fun to do, but we want colleges to know that they can trust a CLT score, that we are an industry leader at this point in terms of proctoring and administering the tests online. And I think more and more of the colleges that know us well rely on us in that way, and they're very, very happy with it.
Well, it sounds like you've covered all areas. Yeah, it's like a reliable source. You've been testing it. You're learning every time you administer the test how you can tweak it. And that's just, it's kind of the work in progress. How can we be the Chick-fil-A of testing, as you mentioned, which I think is great.
And we've had over 5 years of doing this. In the early days, we learned the hard way many times. What SAT is learning right now through AP, we had those days. We did that. I mean, it is, you don't know sometimes until you have thousands of students on your system and realizing the ways you need to adjust the servers and everything else. So there's a lot of complexity, but you get really good at it by doing it and doing it over and over. And that's what we've been doing for a long time.
Right. What is the cost of the CLT, and is the essay component available as an option?
Two great questions. Yeah. So the cost of the CLT is $54. Okay. We've actually never, ever declined requesting a fee waiver. And it's a very, very short, simple form for a fee waiver. Simply email us at info@cltexam.com. Costs should not prevent a student from access to a great college. And so we want to be far more generous in SAT and ACT and making it very simple. If money is an issue, if you've been impacted by COVID in a negative way, CLT wants to serve you just as we would any other student during that time. The regular cost, again, is $54. And then there was another question with that as well.
Is the essay component, is that an option?
So we took the essay away from the test on April 25th, again, because part of what we're doing is a keystroke analysis. And so when we administered that, we wanted to make sure kids were not chatting with other students in different online forums. And so we had to make a quick decision. I think it's more likely than not it will not be there for June either, but it could be coming back in August when our August 22nd test is the next test after June 20th.
Okay, so if a student is looking at applying to a college that requires that essay, then that may be a red flag for them for that particular school.
Yeah, but what we're doing on the essay side is really cool. And so we actually do not grade essays. And so people are like, well, what's the point of doing it if you don't even grade it? What we do is we simply capture the essay prompt. We capture the student response almost as a screenshot. And then the student can decide if they want to pass that on to colleges or not. So the reason we're doing this is, I tutored for years. I would work with parents that you kind of get a sense they want you to basically write their kid's essay for them. Notre Dame knows this. Harvard knows this. They put a little less stock than they used to in the student essay because they know it's been copy edited over and over by high-paid tutors.
Right.
CLT in colleges an authentic writing sample that students did themselves in a proctored setting. So colleges really like that. Maybe we'll add it back for June. It's not likely, but I think we'll have it back in August.
Okay, good point. Wow. I just honestly, okay, so if I put my business cap on, College Board and ACT should be pounding on your door and getting your formula and trying to figure it out so that they could, eliminate all of this nonsense that they're going through right now. Because you guys, I mean, it's like CLT knows what they need to do. I mean, you know the product. You've been.
I do not envy them, and we know how to do it well on a small scale, and we want to grow into a big scale, but they're going right to a big, massive scale. So I do not envy them, and I hope that you students watching have a better experience going forward.
Yeah, you don't want to start from zero to hundreds and thousands or even millions. And I think that you've done it the right way. I think that it started out and you've learned, and you started with your beta 46 students or 45 students. You learn from that and you keep tweaking it. Yeah. Are there any other questions that viewers would want to know, like any answers that you could share that we haven't touched on, because this is just a lot of very valuable information. And just so you know, I will be providing your contact information, the cost of the CLT, any of the highlights that you brought up, they will be in the comment section. So viewers can take a peek at it, because this will be posted on College Prep Roadmap and it'll be there forever. It's a great resource and something that they can, reference back to. But any other, insight?
Just thankful for hearing what we're doing. CLT is very much a grassroots kind of movement. I think, parents have gotten behind us because they want a better experience for their kids, but also because they believe, that there's a bit of a crisis of purpose in some ways in the experience a lot of students are having in school. And given that the massive impact these tests can have on education as a whole, we've been really grateful to connect with parents and students who believe in what we're doing. So please do, if you join us on June 20th, we hope you have a good experience. Please do give us feedback. And that's it. So Dorian, thanks so much for the invite. It's been a lot of fun.
Yes. And one last comment about test taking when it's test optional is we have to remember there's scholarship money. It's getting into college is one thing, but paying for it is another. So students and families, when they're sitting down at the kitchen table and discussing that, talk to those colleges and ask them, hey, I'm going to provide a CLT, and will this be looked at for scholarship? Because you know what? It doesn't hurt to ask. And if you can get money to pay for your college, I mean, it helps. It's a win-win for everyone. So I just thought about that in terms of scholarships. Yeah, that's a big component. Jeremy, this has been just insightful, very informative. I can't thank you enough. I will provide all the information in the comment section. If anyone has any questions, they can email you directly with all the other information. But have a fabulous Thursday, a fabulous weekend. Stay safe. I know you have a big family, 5 children.
Yeah, happy Memorial Day.
Yes, and happy Memorial Day to you too. We'll be in touch.
All right, thank you. Have a good day.
Okay, bye-bye.